The fifth heaven. In the fifth heaven, Enoch encountered a scene markedly different from the orderly activity of the fourth heaven. Instead of angels busily engaged in cosmic administration, he found a company of beings in a state of perpetual melancholy, the fallen watchers, or as they are called in the text, the Grigori. This heaven presented a somber tableau of cosmic consequences, a realm where rebellious angels who had not fully joined Satan's rebellion, but had nevertheless disobeyed divine commands, now dwelt in a state of sorrowful limbo. Upon entering this celestial sphere, Enoch immediately sensed the profound difference in atmosphere. While the previous heavens had been characterized by purposeful activity, or, in the case of the second heaven's prison, by active punishment, the fifth heaven exuded an air of silent resignation and perpetual mourning. The very light of this realm seemed dimmed, not by physical darkness, but by the collective gloom of its inhabitants' spiritual condition. Enoch observed these beings, noting that they were of human appearance, yet their size was greater than that of great giants. This description suggests a fascinating connection between these beings and the Nephilim of Genesis 6, who were described as the offspring of unions between the sons of God and the daughters of men. Their gigantic stature represented their hybrid nature, neither fully angelic nor fully human, but possessing characteristics of both in exaggerated form. Most striking about these beings was their appearance of perpetual sorrow, their faces withered and the silence of their mouths perpetual. Unlike the radiant countenances of faithful angels, the faces of the Grigori bore the marks of ancient grief, their features etched with the lines of eons of regret. Their withered appearance suggested beings who had been drained of their former glory, their celestial radiance dimmed by the consequences of their choices. The silence of their mouths indicated not merely a lack of speech, but a deeper spiritual condition. Beings who once sang in the celestial choirs now rendered mute by their fall from grace. Most telling of all was Enoch's observation that there was no service on the fifth heaven. In every other celestial realm, angels were engaged in specific duties, whether guarding paradise, administering punishment, or guiding celestial bodies. But in the fifth heaven, all meaningful service had ceased. These beings existed in a state of cosmic unemployment, stripped of their former responsibilities, yet not destroyed or subjected to active torment. Their punishment was, in many ways, more subtle and profound. The existential anguish of beings created for divine service, who had rendered themselves unfit for their intended purpose. Troubled by this sorrowful sight, Enoch inquired of his guides, "Wherefore are these very withered, and their faces melancholy, and their mouths silent? And wherefore is there no service on this heaven?" His question reflected his understanding that angelic beings are defined by their service, that to exist without divine purpose is, for an angel, a state contrary to their fundamental nature. The answer he received provided crucial context for understanding both these particular beings and the larger cosmic drama of rebellion and its consequences. His guides explained, "These are the Grigori who with their prince Satanael rejected the Lord of Light, and after them are those who are held in great darkness on the second heaven." This explanation established a hierarchical relationship between different groups of fallen angels. At the lowest level were those imprisoned in the second heaven, angels who had fully committed to Satan's rebellion and were now held in great darkness. Above them in status were the Grigori of the fifth heaven, beings who had participated in rebellion but perhaps to a lesser degree or with mitigating circumstances. And above these was Satan himself, here called Satanael, the instigator and leader of the cosmic rebellion. The guides continued with a more specific account of the Grigori's transgression. 3 of them went down onto the earth from the Lord's throne to the place Hermon, and broke through their vows on the shoulder of the hill, Hermon, and saw the daughters of men, how good they are, and took to themselves wives, and befouled the earth with their deeds. This narrative directly connects the Grigori to the enigmatic passage in Genesis 6, 1-4, which speaks of the sons of God taking human wives. According to Enoch's guides, these beings broke their celestial vows at a specific geographical location, Mount Hermon, a massif on the border between modern Syria and Lebanon, whose name derives from a Hebrew root meaning sacred or forbidden. This mountain apparently served as their entry point to the earthly realm, a liminal space between heaven and earth, where the boundary between dimensions was thinner. The specific nature of their transgression involved illicit unions with human women, described in the text as taking wives, and befouling the earth with their deeds. This was no mere case of angels admiring human beauty from afar, but an active crossing of boundaries established by divine decree. Spiritual beings entering into physical relationships with humans, producing offspring that were neither fully human nor fully angelic. The consequences of these unions were cosmic in scale, who in all times of their age made lawlessness and mixing, and giants are born and marvelous men, and great enmity. The offspring of these prohibited relationships were the giants or Nephilim of Genesis, beings of extraordinary stature and abilities, whose existence represented a violation of the established order of creation. These hybrid beings, neither fully human nor fully angelic, introduced great enmity into the world, perhaps referring to unprecedented violence and corruption that eventually led to the flood. For this cosmic transgression, God judged them with great judgment. The Grigori were removed from their positions of service and confined to the fifth heaven, a realm where they could observe but no longer participate in the cosmic administration. Their punishment wasn't primarily physical torment, but the existential anguish of knowing they had violated their purpose and contributed to tremendous suffering on earth. In their current state, these fallen watchers weep for their brethren, and they will be punished on the Lord's great day. This weeping wasn't merely for themselves, but for their companions still imprisoned in the darkness of the second heaven. And their current condition wasn't their final state. They awaited further judgment on the Lord's great day, suggesting that cosmic justice unfolds in stages rather than being immediately and finally administered. The fifth heaven thus serves as a holding place for these particular fallen angels, beings who occupied a middle position in the hierarchy of rebellion. Not as culpable as Satan and his most devoted followers, yet not innocent enough to retain their original positions. They existed in a state of suspended animation, their glory dimmed, their voices silenced, their purpose forgotten. Their presence in this heaven served as a powerful reminder of the consequences of rebellion, a testimony to the universe that divine boundaries exist for profound reasons and cannot be transgressed without far-reaching repercussions. This celestial realm represents a cosmic purgatory of sorts, not a place of active purification or redemption, but a holding pattern where beings wait in sorrowful contemplation of their errors. The Grigori had forfeited their original glory and purpose, but retained enough divine connection to recognize and mourn their fallen state. Unlike the angels imprisoned in the darkness of the second heaven, they were not completely cut off from divine light but existed in a perpetual twilight of diminished splendor. The atmosphere of this heaven would have been thick with unspoken regret. The very air permeated with the collective sorrow of these once mighty beings. The architecture, if such existed in this realm, would have reflected their intermediate state, neither the glorious structures of the higher heavens, nor the prison-like containment of the second heaven, but a kind of faded grandeur, magnificent buildings now in a state of neglect without being completely ruined. For Enoch, this heaven would have been particularly poignant to witness. As a human being, a creature of lesser origin than these angelic beings, he had remained faithful to divine commands, and was now ascending through the heavens, while these once mighty celestial beings had fallen from their exalted positions through their disobedience. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. A mortal man rising, immortal angels fallen. The inclusion of the fifth heaven in Enoch's cosmic tour serves several important theological purposes. First, it establishes a more nuanced understanding of angelology than a simple heaven-hell dichotomy. The cosmos contains intermediate states and gradations of both reward and punishment, with beings occupying different positions based on the nature and severity of their transgressions. Second, it provides a more detailed explanation of the cryptic Genesis account regarding the sons of God and the Nephilim, offering context for one of the most mysterious passages in Scripture. According to this tradition, the corruption that led to the flood wasn't merely human wickedness, but a cosmic breach of boundaries when angels interfered with human development and created hybrid offspring. Third, the fifth heaven serves as a sobering reminder that status and position offer no protection against the consequences of rebellion. These beings had once occupied exalted positions in the divine hierarchy, yet through their choices had reduced themselves to a state of perpetual mourning. Their fall serves as a warning that cosmic justice operates without respect to one's original station. The fifth heaven also introduces the concept that angelic beings, like humans, possess free will and the capacity to choose obedience or rebellion. The Grigori weren't programmed automatons, but moral agents who made catastrophic choices and now bore the consequences of those decisions. Their current state of sorrowful inactivity represented not arbitrary punishment, but the natural outcome of having violated their fundamental nature and purpose. This realm further illustrates the principle that cosmic rebellion produces consequences beyond the rebels themselves. The actions of the Grigori had affected not only their own status, but had introduced corruption and violence to Earth through their hybrid offspring. The great enmity they had caused resulted in suffering for countless innocent beings, adding the weight of responsibility for others' pain to their own personal loss of status and purpose. Most profoundly, the fifth heaven reveals that cosmic memory is eternal, that the consequences of actions persist long after the actions themselves. Eons had passed since the Grigori's descent to Mount Hermon, yet they remained in their diminished state, weeping for their brethren and awaiting final judgment. There is no cosmic statute of limitations, no point at which the universal record of one's choices fades away. This sobering reality would have impressed upon Enoch the eternal significance of moral choices, reinforcing his commitment to righteousness. As Enoch prepared to ascend to the sixth heaven, the image of these once glorious beings in their state of perpetual mourning would have remained with him, a powerful reminder of what happens when creatures, no matter how exalted, set their will against the divine order. Their silent, withered faces served as a warning that would accompany him through the remainder of his celestial journey, underscoring the importance of fidelity to divine command regardless of temptation or circumstance.